Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. Hope everybody's day is going beautiful. Got some headline news here for you. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope the family's doing good. The weather's not too bad, and everybody you love is healthy. So what do we got in headline news today? Well, the big thing is you got Trump being indicted, and that seems to be just pretty much dominating the headlines. But if you follow this channel, you follow headline news, you know that this is a pretty big distraction. And I want to talk about what I think it's distracting. So let me go ahead and bring in this quick little blurb right here. And then we're going to get to the headlines and how this affects everything. I think what you're seeing right now in the world that we live in, whether it is the riots in France, whether it is the derailments in the United States, whether it is the riots going on in Israel or the Middle East, is what you're seeing is a new system of supply chains. And let me be honest about it. Everybody's been talking about these stimulus packages. We got them during COVID. We got them through a bunch of different times, but they're all talking about supply chains. They're talking about infrastructure. And if you live in the United States, you keep thinking to yourself, why are we sending billions of dollars to Ukraine for infrastructure? Everything's getting passed under infrastructure. Okay, so let's peel back the lines a little bit. I want to talk to you. When you think infrastructure, think supply chains. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about supply chains. I'm going to give you some maps, and then I'm going to put the maps and the words together, and you're going to see, or at least understand a little bit more of what's going on. So if the supply chains run the world, who runs the supply chains? Think about that for a minute. Think about the railways in the United States. Are those all owned by American corporations? Think about the pipelines that go through the United States. Are those owned by American corporations? Think about this. Think about the pipelines that go through the Middle East. Who are those owned by? We spoke about this in the last podcast. Is that the pipelines going through the Middle East up to Ukraine are a bit of a conflict point. So when you think about infrastructure, think about supply chains. Infrastructure is by and large like the internet, open for use to all. Supply chains, by contrast, are like intranets, networks of collaborators. Standards are easier to enforce within intranets than on the internet as a whole. The phrase interconnected global economy has become a cliche. So let's move on over here. So when you think about the derailments, when you think about the pipelines, I want you to think about the people that own those pipelines. As our concerns about supply chains increase, our dependence upon them grows. As states come to depend more on corporations, the distinctions between public and private, customer and citizen melt away. Doesn't that kind of sound like what's happening right now? I'm going to read that again because I want everyone to understand this. As states come to depend more on corporations, the distinctions between public and private, customer and citizen melt away. Now, if you live in the United States or you pay attention to the Western media, you're hearing a lot about public-private partnerships. Well, what is a public-private partnership? It kind of sounds like the same relationship between a citizen and a state, only it's being redefined. In a weird sort of way, with this new infrastructure being built and the corporate takeover or the corporate unmasking of the United States and the West, what we're seeing is a redefinition of the relationship between citizen and state. Now everybody is becoming a quote unquote employee of the corporate state. When national citizenship provides little benefit, supply citizenship can matter much more. The supply demand, because I want you guys to, this is a pretty valid point right here, and it's kind of blew me away. The supply-demand world exposed some painful realities. In your guys' opinion, what do governments value more, natural or human resources? What's more valuable in your community, natural resources or human resources? Well, all you need to do is drive down to a kind of a crappy part of town and see all the homeless people. You don't ever drive to a crappy gold mine and see a bunch of homeless gold. Natural resources are more beneficial to the state than human resources. I'm not saying I buy that or I believe that in my personal view, But when it comes to commodification, when it comes to the idea of finance, commerce, and supply chains, natural resources are better than human resources. I think it's a giant problem because that is something that is causing poverty, heartache, and just full-blown despair throughout the world, is that we no longer care about the human resources, but we do care about the natural resources. And I know what you're thinking, aren't humans natural? Yeah. But natural resources on the market have a price. Does the little boy who mines cobalt in Africa, does he have a price? He's got slave labor. And it's the same thing with third world colonialism. Like the corporations go into the third world, they pay slave labor, they pay the bribes, they deal with the corruption because the human resources are bountiful and cheap and can be thrown away. And they use the human resources to extract the natural resources. So let's move a little bit further on supply chains, and then we're going to get into some maps that I think will show you what's going on. So energy and commodities extractive companies are perhaps the most permanent embodiment of the supply chain empire. I want you to think about who's above the law in your country. In my country, bankers are above the law. BlackRock is above the law. Multinational corporations have personhood, and so they are above the law. And these are all entities that run supply chain. Supply chain governance. This is a key word right here. I want people to think about that. Supply chain governance. Let's say that there's a company and it's owned half by Saudi Arabia and half by China. And that company owns a pipeline that runs to the United States that trades natural gas. Are those corporations responsible for the welfare of the very people if that pipeline breaks? Well, the laws would tell you yes, they are. But good luck trying to sue a corporation, and good luck trying to get any money from a corporation that belongs to another country. You see that they have these layers upon layers upon layers of protection. Not only do they have diplomatic immunity, but they are governed by a corporate law that may not be subject to the laws of the United States. And it's these sort of corporate shells that have found their way throughout the world through special economic zones and all these family offices that get together and they build these special economic zones where there's no liability. You can have an oil spill, you could have a train derailment where you pour, hydrochloride all over the ground, and no one's going to get in trouble. It's not going to be that big of a deal. We're going to hide everything. And they're protected. They're protected by the government, they're protected by the state, and they are protected by the threat of shutting off the supply chain. Oh, you're going to sue me? I'll just shut off your supply chain. And I talk a lot about, if you want to know what's happening in your country, then look in other countries. We in the West, we were made to see Putin and Russia as this devil that was willing to turn off the gas to Europe in order to prove a point. Well, I don't think that is something that is specific to Putin or Russia. That's something that is specific to the person that owns the pipeline. The moment they're in trouble, they take their ball and they go home, and there's nothing you can do about it. Most companies desperately want governments to reduce the bureaucratic inefficiencies that delay businesses and hurt their own people. A supply-demand world could therefore be more competitive, but less corrupt at the same time. So this is sort of the ideas put forth by the technocratic leaders and it's one of these dog chasing his tails arguments. Yeah, greater supply chains will create more corruption, but at the same time, they'll make it a different, better kind of corruption. Figure that one out. But that's what you get from these guys. You get the doctors that told you smoking isn't bad for you. It's amazing what science you can get if you pay enough money. So talking about supply chains and talking about where we are in the world and talking about riots and talking about people, I want you to see some things that could be happening. Now, those of us who pay attention to Europe, we've seen the sort of disintegration of the euro. That financial system is collapsing over there. And a lot of us, myself included, thought that the end of the euro meant that Europe becomes fragmented and the union falls apart. But here's a different map that says something different. Europe has a substantial number of separatist movements, but even as it devolves, new nations can become members of the collective European Union. So this map is sort of a map on a map. So there's Europe, and then here's all these little separatist movements. You know, imagine Europe not having the weight of a country behind it, but a small little fiefdom, because that's kind of what it looks like, right? And wouldn't a small fiefdom be much easier to rule by a giant corporation or by a giant centralized entity that doesn't have borders? It's almost like we're going back to medieval times, and you have the lords and you have the fiefdoms. But think about it. Like, for a long time, I believe people like myself, I was like, oh, Europe's going to fail in a way, and they're going to go back into this, fall back into a more fragmented, country-centric type of continent. But it's not true. It's very possible that you could see this sort of fragmentation make it easier to be brought into the folds of corruption. Think about divide and conquer. Now, as you're looking at this map, I want you to think about the United States. Wouldn't the United States fall victim to the same sort of prey too? Imagine, and you can already kind of see it. I'll give you an example. In California, the north part of California wants to secede from the south part of California. There's part of Oregon that wants to become part of Washington. And so in a lot of ways, what you're seeing in this part of the world, in Europe over here, is the same kind of things that you're seeing throughout other parts of the world. And as we talked earlier in the podcast, we can understand that if you want to know what's happening in your country, then take a look around the world. Let's check out some other maps. So here you can see, oh, maybe you can't see. Here's another sort of supply chain map that you can kind of see comes from the Middle East over here. And these are all the different pipelines, the waterways. And I just wanted to show you this. I want you to get an idea of how energy moves through the country. The energy moves through the world the same way your blood moves through your body. And if you disrupt one of those arteries, then the place in which the blood goes to can die. So if you disrupt one of these pipelines, the cities that are built up around it, they too can die. And when you begin looking at the world through the lens of supply chains as arteries in a body, you can really begin to understand why there's so much war, why there's so much fighting, and why there's so much money involved in the different supply chains. Now, as you're looking at that map, I'm gonna show you the other United States map, because I think that this one is relevant as well. Okay, so here we are. For those of you that saw me yesterday, you kind of got to see what's happening here. Okay, so can you guys see this one here? Okay, so it's important that you see the height right there. Okay. Okay, so, and we come here. Okay, so here you're looking at a map of the United States and proposed high-speed railways. Okay, this is proposed high-speed railways for the United States of America. Now, as you're looking at that map, I'm going to read to you some headline news, and you guys start to put the pieces together, okay? Biden offers $450 million for clean energy projects at coal mines. Well, where are a lot of the old coal mines? Well, a lot of the old coal mines are East Palestine, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Isn't it strange how there's all these train derailments right where Biden is offering $450 million for clean energy projects? Here's another one I think you guys will like. Oil extends rally after OPEC Plus takes aim. What's going on with oil prices right now? Aren't they kind of going through the roof? You saw OPEC, you saw Saudi and Russia start cutting their barrels and jacking up their prices. So what I'm telling you with this map, at least what I see, is that we're seeing sort of a fight to the death, a duel, if you will, about the energy that's going to run the future. I spoke to you about Biden giving $450 billion in grants, and yet you see the old money energy resources, the oil companies, cutting barrels. So they're choking off the energy and forcing people to pay more for it. And you have Biden over here saying, look, let's invest money in this other thing. I think what you're seeing is with supply chains, with the sort of new transportation, with infrastructure and supply chains, you're seeing an age-old war of who's going to run not only the pipelines and the infrastructure, but what energy we're going to be running on. And you guys can do the same sort of stuff that I'm doing here. I just pulled up some maps, and you can see where the infrastructure is going. You can see that those same infrastructure lines run where pipelines are going. And what's inside pipelines? The lifeblood energy, be it oil, be it natural gas, or be it rare earth minerals. A lot of these spots that we see close to East Palestine have a lot of the rare earth minerals around them. And so I'm not a judge, I'm not a jury, but I do want people to be a little bit more judgmental about the information they're taking in. When you see Trump all over the news, when you see Biden all over the news, know that that's a distraction, and try to peel back the curtain and look and see what's happening in your area. Look and see what's happening to the industries in your area. Look and see where money is being given to people to invest in. And when you do that, you can get a better picture of what's really going on. And a lot of times what's really going on is what the people in positions of authority don't want you to see. The last thing they want is a group of people protesting these rare earth mineral sites where they want to work at. The last thing they want is people protesting a new pipeline. The last thing they want is people out there protesting and getting in the way of $1 million infrastructural pipeline. They don't want that. They would rather you be in New York worried about Trump, worried about Biden, worried about Joe Biden's son. So while all these things may have some merit in the world of politics, the majority of them are in fact distractions. And I want to leave everybody with this. It's not about red or blue. It's about right and wrong. It's about caring about your neighbor. It's about making your life and everybody's in it a little bit better. And the way you do that is by understanding that everybody is struggling. Everybody has their own demons they're facing. So be kind and know that most people have the same, almost the exact same wants. They want a better life for their kid. They want a nice place to live. They want clean air and clean water. So if you know that, the next time you find yourself getting fed up with somebody, just stop for a minute and try to see yourself in them. So we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. The media is distractions, supply chains, and the race to see who runs tomorrow. That's what we got. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by today. Aloha.